Since I'm resigning, my own view is that détente is a euphemism for peaceful coexistence. And I think you will probably live longer than I will, and you'll learn the result of it.
What if I told you that during the Cold War, NATO had secret armies hidden across Europe? Armies trained not just to defend against a Soviet invasion, but also to manipulate politics, fuel terror, and even topple governments. And what if I told you that this operation was funded through covert channels, including the Vatican Bank, and led by one of the most paranoid and influential CIA officers of all time, James Jesus Angleton? Today we're peeling back the layers of one of the Cold War's most secretive and controversial operations, Operation Gladio. But first, let's set the stage.
If a person supports organizations which reflect communist teachings, or organizations labeled communist by the Department of Justice, she may be a communist.
The Cold War had barely begun in the late 1940s, when fears of a Soviet invasion of Western Europe were at their peak. In response, NATO devised a plan that would prepare Europe for a possible Soviet occupation. This plan was known as Operation Gladio. The strategy was simple but chilling. NATO would establish secret stay-behind armies in European countries tasked with guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and intelligence gathering in the event of a Soviet takeover. These units, deeply embedded in their own societies, would act as resistance fighters behind enemy lines. But as we'll see, the operation didn't just prepare for a Soviet invasion. It became entangled in political manipulation, violent extremism, and false flag operations, all in the name of combating communism.
We began to acquire information which showed that there were two wars going on. And the Soviets had no desire whatsoever that the world be molded in a Western fashion.
Now, you can't talk about Operation Gladio without mentioning James Jesus Angleton, one of the most enigmatic figures in American intelligence. Angleton was the CIA's chief of counterintelligence from 1954 to 1974, and his influence stretched far beyond his official title. To Angleton, the Cold War wasn't just a battle between nations. It was a deep psychological game of deception and betrayal, with communism lurking in every shadow.
But there are other communists who don't show their real faces, who work more silently.
Born in 1917, Angleton had an elite education at Yale and Oxford, but it was his work with the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, during World War II that first connected him to Italy and the world of European espionage. Angleton had a deep distrust of Soviet influence, and this paranoia would come to define his career. He believed that the Soviet Union had infiltrated Western governments at the highest levels, and that no one, not even his closest allies, could be trusted. This mindset made him a perfect fit for Operation Gladio.
The first war presumably being between the Allies and Germany and Japan, and the second war being
world domination, global war.
By
the Soviet Union.
Operation Gladio wasn't just about creating secret armies. It needed a steady flow of money to fund these covert operations. While the CIA was a key player in financing Gladio, the real surprise was the involvement of the Vatican Bank, officially known as the Institute for the Works of Religion.
Religion can be an incredibly profitable business if done right, and there's no better example of this than the Vatican, the world's smallest sovereign nation. At just 0.27 square kilometers, it is home to the wealthiest religion on the planet, the Catholic Church.
Under the leadership of Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, the Vatican Bank funneled money into Gladio's operations, laundering CIA funds and supporting far-right political movements. But why would the Vatican be involved? The answer lies in ideology. The Catholic Church, especially under Pope Pius XII, was fiercely anti-communist. The Vatican feared the spread of atheistic communism in Europe and saw itself as a protector of Western Christian values. This ideological alignment made the Church a willing partner in the fight against leftist movements across Europe. Marcinkus, often called the Pope's banker, was a key figure in facilitating these financial dealings. His Vatican Bank became a hub for laundering CIA money, ensuring that the funds for Gladio could flow without raising suspicion. These funds were used to support not only covert military operations but also political campaigns and far-right extremist groups, whose sole aim was to prevent the rise of communism in Europe, particularly in Italy.
A name to conjure with, Mussolini. It draws 400,000 to Palermo harbor with a background of battleships to hear Il Duce on peace.
No country was more impacted by Operation Gladio than Italy. In the post-war years, Italy was politically unstable with a powerful Communist Party, PCI, vying for influence. The fear that Italy might fall to communism drove NATO and the CIA to make Italy's stay-behind units among the most active in Europe. And this is where the story takes a dark turn. Italy entered a period of extreme political violence in the late 1960s that would last until the early 1980s.
More rioting in Rome, where riots indeed have been a not uncommon feature of the post-war scene. This one was due to a march of protest by war veterans who tried to reach the Palazzo Viminale to demand increased pensions from Premier de Gasperi.
Known as the Years of Lead, Anni di Piombo, this era saw bombings, assassinations, and acts of terror carried out by both far-left and far-right extremist groups. But what has since come to light is that many of these violent incidents were directly tied to Gladio operatives working with far-right factions. Take the 1969 Piazza Fontana bombing in Milan, for example. A bomb exploded in a bank, killing 17 people. The Italian government initially blamed anarchists and left-wing extremists for the attack. But investigations years later uncovered a different story. Far-right groups with ties to Gladio were likely responsible, framing left-wing radicals to create a climate of fear and justify crackdowns on communists. This wasn't an isolated incident. Gladio operatives were involved in a broader strategy known as the Strategy of Tension, a campaign designed to destabilize Italian politics by carrying out terror attacks and blaming them on leftist groups. The goal was simple: to prevent the Italian Communist Party from gaining power and to maintain right-wing control over the government. By stoking fear of communism, Gladio ensured that Italy remained aligned with NATO and the West. Another horrific example of this strategy occurred in 1980 during the Bologna railway station bombing, which killed 85 people and wounded more than 200. Like the Piazza Fontana bombing, this attack was initially blamed on left-wing extremists, but later evidence pointed to far-right terrorists connected to Gladio's stay-behind networks. These attacks were part of a wider effort to keep Italy politically unstable, using fear and violence as tools of manipulation.
Della ferrovia c'era il rifiuto psicologico di accettare l'idea dell'attentato, perché Bologna è stata sempre una città abbastanza tranquilla dove la gente è vissuta.
For decades, Operation Gladio remained a closely guarded secret. But in 1990, the truth finally began to emerge when Italian Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti publicly admitted the existence of Gladio. His revelation triggered a wave of investigations across Europe as governments scrambled to uncover just how deeply embedded these secret networks were in their countries. The public was outraged.
A member of the now dissolved Christian Democracy Party, he was Prime Minister 7 times and one of Italy's most prominent post-war figures. He also served as Foreign, Interior and Defence Minister. Andreotti was accused of involvement with the mafia and of murder. He was acquitted, but a court ruled he had ties to the organisation.
How could their governments, supposedly defenders of democracy, have been involved in sponsoring terrorism, political assassinations, and manipulating their own citizens through fear? Investigations revealed that Gladio had been active in numerous European countries, including France, Germany, and Belgium. But it was in Italy that the operation's most violent actions had played out. The European Parliament condemned Gladio, calling for transparency and accountability. The Vatican Bank's role in financing these operations, although less publicly discussed, remains one of the most controversial aspects of the operation. The Vatican's involvement shows how deeply entrenched the anti-communist ideology was, not just among governments, but also institutions like the Church.
For decades, the Catholic Church has been haunted by scandal after scandal after scandal. With more than 1.3 billion members worldwide, it is the second biggest religion in the world.
As for James Jesus Angleton, his role in Gladio was emblematic of his broader approach to Cold War intelligence. Angleton believed in the necessity of extreme measures to protect the West from communism, and for him, there was no room for hesitation or half measures. His paranoia shaped much of the CIA's Cold War strategy, from his obsessive mole hunting in the U.S. to his deep involvement with European intelligence agencies, particularly in Italy. Angleton's career ended in scandal in 1974 after his obsessive search for Soviet moles led to internal chaos within the CIA.
Was your branch of the CIA involved in the surveillance of American citizens here inside the United States?
Absolutely not.
Did you resign completely voluntarily, or were you in some way induced to resign?
I'm very unhappy to leave the agency.
But his influence on U.S. intelligence and his role in shaping covert operations like Gladio left a lasting legacy. Angleton's famous motto, "Deception is a state of mind and the mind of the state," captures his belief in the dark art of espionage, where the lines between truth and lies are always blurred. What began as a plan to resist a Soviet invasion transformed into a shadowy network that manipulated politics, staged terror attacks, and undermined democracy, all under the guise of protecting it. Gladio's revelations serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and covert operations that operate without public oversight. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Gladio is the question it leaves behind. How many more operations like Gladio remain hidden from public view? How many secret networks, funded by shadowy institutions and directed by paranoid intelligence officers, are still operating in the name of national security? As we reflect on the dark history of Gladio, it's important to remember that the truth often takes decades to emerge. And sometimes, the institutions we trust the most, governments, intelligence agencies, even religious organizations, are the ones operating in the shadows. If you found this look into one of the Cold War's most secretive and controversial operations compelling, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe for more untold stories from history. There are countless hidden chapters just waiting to be uncovered, like this video about Operation Sunrise, where the CIA predecessor OSS helped World War II Nazis escape their fate, which in turn led into Operation Gladio. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the biggest threats to democracy come not from outside, but from within.